The generator drive low oil pressure light comes on if the generator drive oil pressure is below the minimum operating limit, and the high oil temperature light comes on if the generator drive oil temperature exceeds the maximum system operating. The electrical system limits are higher than the limits established by United Airlines. The generator drive oil temperature indicators, one for each generator drive, have two scales, rise and in. Both scales indicate the temperature of the respective generator drive oil in degrees Celsius. The caution range for each scale is marked in yellow. The generator drive temperature switch has two positions corresponding to the two scales on the generator drive oil temperature indicators. Now touch the drive temperature switch to position it to in. When the generator drive temperature switch is in the in position, both generator drive oil temperature indicators display the temperature of the oil entering the respective generator drive. The in temperature is an indication of how efficiently the generator drive oil is being cooled as it passes through the cooler. If the in temperature exceeds the operating limit, the respective high oil temperature light comes on, regardless of whether the drive temperature switch is positioned to rise or in. Now touch the drive temperature switch to position it to rise. When the drive temperature switch is in the rise position, both generator drive oil temperature indicators display the rise in temperature of the oil as it passes through the generator drive. The rise temperature is an indication of how hard the generator drive is working. A higher than normal rise temperature indicates either an excessive generator power load or the poor condition of the generator drive. The generator drive disconnect switches are spring-loaded out of the disconnect position, and they need only battery bus power to operate. The switch covers are safety wired closed to prevent an accidental generator disconnect, because the generator drives can be reconnected only from the ground. Now touch the left generator disconnect switch to lift the cover. Now touch the left generator disconnect switch again to move it to the disconnect position. Activating a disconnect switch causes two actions. The respective generator field relay opens, which in turn causes the associated generator breaker to, and the disconnect solenoid in the generator drive energizes, causing the generator drive to disconnect from the engine. The schematic has been changed to represent the electrical system on the ground with the battery switch placed to on. The standby power off light comes on when the AC standby bus is unpowered. The standby power switch is a three-position. Depending upon its position, the switch controls, through a series of relays, either the source of power to the AC and DC standby buses, or the ability of those buses to transfer to their alternate power sources. The auto position of the standby power switch has different functions, depending on whether the airplane is in flight or on the ground. Whether in flight or on the ground, if all AC buses are powered, the auto position indicates that the AC standby bus is powered by transfer bus 1, and the DC standby bus is powered by DC bus 1. When in flight, the auto position allows both standby buses to automatically transfer to their alternate power sources if power is lost to either standby bus. Now touch DC bus 1 to make it malfunction and cause a loss of power to the DC standby bus. The DC standby bus is now powered by its alternate power source, the battery bus. And the AC standby bus is powered by its alternate source, the battery bus, through the static converter. The schematic has been changed to represent the electrical system on the ground with the battery switch positioned to on. The automatic transfer to provide power to the standby buses is prevented on the ground, which prevents draining the battery. The schematic has been restored to represent the electrical system in normal flight configuration. Now touch the standby power switch to position it to off. When the standby power switch is in the off position, the AC and DC standby buses are not powered. The standby power off light comes on because the AC standby bus is not powered. Now touch the standby power switch to move it to the battery position. When the standby power switch is in the battery position, the AC and DC standby buses are powered by their alternate sources. And the battery bus is powered by the hot battery bus rather than by TR3, regardless of how TR3 is. If power to the standby buses is lost when the airplane is on the ground, positioning the standby power switch to the battery position will ensure both standby buses are powered.